The night the black ship appeared, the sky burned like a wound that refused to heal. People still talk about that glow, the one that hovered above the horizon long after the stars had vanished. A strange orange pulse that rippled through the darkness. Some said it was a comet. Others whispered it was a warning. But those who saw it up close knew the truth. It wasn't from this world. It was the beginning of something that would change everything, something ancient, buried, and angry. No one remembers exactly when the stories about the black ship began. The oldest records speak of a vessel that sailed the edge of time itself, built not by hands, but by echoes of forgotten civilizations. Its hull, forged from obsidian metal, carried the marks of countless wars fought among the stars. They called it the Armada of the Lost Suns, a fleet swallowed by history, its purpose erased, its survivors cursed to wander the void. For centuries, it was nothing more than a myth, told by star watchers and dreamers. That changed when the ship came back. The first to spot it was a small crew aboard a deep space research station orbiting the dying planet Varus 9. They were scientists, not soldiers, people who studied ancient signals drifting through cosmic dust. They detected something unusual, a rhythmic pulse, steady as a heartbeat, hidden beneath layers of static. When they decoded it, the message was simple: coordinates, repeating endlessly. Against orders, they followed them. What they found wasn't a planet or asteroid field. It was a shadow floating against the starlight, larger than any vessel ever built by human hands. The ship's surface was like glass, black, reflective, alive. Patterns moved across it like veins of molten light. When the crew sent a drone closer, every instrument began to fail. The signal cut out. For 7 minutes, the feed went dark. When it came back, the drone was gone, and the black ship's pulse had changed. It was no longer random. It was answering them. Within hours, the station lost contact with command. The distress signal they managed to send was fragmented, but one word survived: awake. After that, the station vanished from the grid. Only silence remained. A rescue team arrived weeks later and found nothing but orbiting debris and a cold trail of radiation pointing deeper into uncharted space. The official story said it was a malfunction, a tragic accident caused by experimental equipment. But not everyone believed that. There were rumors among the fleets, whispers in mess halls. Secret files passed between those who'd seen too much. They spoke of a black-armored ship moving silently between stars, leaving trails of fire in its wake. Entire outposts went dark after reporting contact. Energy readings spiked on nearby planets. Some believed the ship was searching for something, or someone. Down on the colonies, people began to notice changes in the sky. Magnetic storms twisted the auroras into shapes that looked almost like writing. Machines malfunctioned. Power grids failed for seconds at a time. Always when the black ship's signal flared in the background, a few called it a curse, others called it judgment. Among those trying to uncover the truth was a linguist turned explorer, known only for her obsession with ancient transmissions. She believed the black ship wasn't just a weapon or a relic. It was a message from a civilization older than humanity, a kind of cosmic mirror reflecting everything we'd become. She followed its signal from system to system, tracing echoes through broken satellites and dead frequencies. Each stop brought her closer to the truth and closer to something that seemed to be following her. Her recordings, recovered later, describe visions that defy explanation. She spoke of voices woven through the static, whispering in forgotten languages. She described a light that wasn't light, a warmth that felt like memory. Her last entry ended abruptly, her voice trembling as she said, "It's not a ship, it's remembering us." After that, her vessel disappeared, joining the growing list of missing explorers. Meanwhile, back on Earth, astronomers began to detect an anomaly near the outer rim of the solar system. A vast object was moving toward the inner planets, slow, deliberate, as if drawn by gravity or intent. The patterns in its signal matched the same pulse first detected years ago. Governments denied the rumors, but leaked footage told another story. An enormous silhouette drifting through the darkness, its shape bending starlight, its wake glowing like burning ash. Then came the dreams. People across the world started reporting the same vision, a black horizon, a sound like breaking glass, and a voice whispering their names. Scientists dismissed it as mass hysteria, but deep down, people knew something was coming. There was a pull in the air, a low hum that resonated through bones and wires alike. The black ship wasn't just approaching, it was awakening something buried inside us. When the first fragments entered the atmosphere, they burned brighter than any meteor. The night turned red. Fragments of obsidian metal rained down over the oceans, some no larger than stones, others the size of towers. Teams were sent to collect them, but most never returned. Those who did reported strange phenomena: time distortion, hallucinations, whispers that grew louder near the fragments. The military sealed everything under classified codes. But secrets have a way of leaking out, especially when the sky itself becomes the witness. The fragments began to hum, vibrating in unison, forming a pattern identical to the ship's signal. Satellites started to fail. Communications broke across continents. Then, for the first time, the black ship appeared in the night sky, visible to the naked eye, a silent shape blocking the stars, larger than the moon, motionless but alive. Some said it came to reclaim what was stolen. Others believed it was warning us of something worse, a storm of cosmic fire spreading from beyond known space. Whatever its reason, one thing was clear: it was not here by accident. And as its shadow stretched across the planet, people began to feel a strange connection, as if a forgotten part of their memory had been unlocked. In old legends, there's talk of a curse that falls on those who disturb the silence of the stars. The black ship might be that curse, the punishment of those who thought they could reshape the universe with fire. But maybe it's something deeper, a reminder that everything we create eventually comes back to find us. Now, as lights flicker across the last surviving stations and the black ship's pulse grows louder, one question remains. What happens when the forgotten Armada finally remembers what it was built for? The signal keeps repeating, stronger each day. The stars are moving, bending, reshaping themselves into patterns that no telescope can fully explain. Somewhere beyond the edge of our sky, the black ship waits, its engines silent, its purpose unknown. And tonight, for the first time, something on board has started to move. Then, just before the recording ends, the transmission cuts to static, followed by a single whisper, soft and distant, carried across the noise. The stars are not yours anymore. And that's where the story begins. After that last whisper, the world changed quietly, almost like it had been holding its breath. The stars no longer looked the same. Astronomers said their positions had shifted by fractions of degrees, but those tiny changes made entire constellations look unfamiliar. The patterns that had guided sailors, dreamers, and explorers for centuries were gone, rearranged into something new, something that almost looked like a design. And at the center of that design, the black ship hovered in silence. Governments launched new programs to study it, but no one wanted to admit how little control they actually had. Every attempt to send a probe failed. Drones disintegrated near its surface. Lasers bent away like light curving around a black hole. Yet, it never attacked. It didn't move. It just stayed there, locked in orbit, silent, waiting. People began calling it the Eye Above. News anchors refused to say Black Ship anymore. It made people uneasy. But in whispers behind closed doors, everyone still used the old name. The fragments collected from the oceans and deserts were stored in hidden research facilities. One of them was called the Helios Array, a remote base built on the rim of a salt flat where no signals could escape. The scientists working there thought they were safe. But every night, the fragments would hum softly, as if breathing. They tried to isolate the vibrations, to study the patterns, and what they found shook them. Each fragment emitted a unique frequency, but when played together, they formed something like a song. It wasn't random. It was structured, mathematical, and strangely beautiful. The lead researcher, a quiet man who rarely spoke to anyone outside the lab, became obsessed with decoding it. He noticed that when the frequencies aligned perfectly, the fragments glowed faintly, like they were remembering light. On the night he finally managed to synchronize them, every light in the facility went out. The backup power failed. The air turned heavy. And when the lights came back, every computer screen displayed the same message in shifting symbols no one could translate. The fragments had changed. They were no longer cold metal. They were warm, almost alive. Outside, the sky rippled like water. The staff described seeing faint shadows moving across the horizon, though nothing showed on radar. The next morning, half the team requested evacuation. They were denied. The project was too important. But within a week, the Helios array stopped responding. A rescue squad sent to investigate found the facility empty. The equipment melted into the walls as if it had been absorbed. Only one camera feed survived, showing the lead researcher standing in the center of the room, whispering something over and over before the image cut to static. No one could make out the words. While the official report claimed it was an accident, underground networks started leaking data. Snippets of the frequency song, fragments of images showing symbols etched into the floors. People online began calling it the Armada code, believing it was the key to understanding what the black ship wanted. Forums filled with theories. Some said the ship was trying to communicate. Others thought it was rewriting the laws of space itself. But the most chilling theory was that the code wasn't meant for humans at all. It was a summons. Far from the research bases, in the rural outskirts of small colonies, strange phenomena began appearing. Magnetic fields fluctuated wildly. Electronic devices behaved as if controlled by invisible hands. Entire villages woke to find their shadows frozen against the ground even when the sun moved. The air smelled faintly of ozone, and the hum, always that low, steady hum, was growing stronger. Among the scattered witnesses was a young mechanic who'd spent his life repairing old communication satellites. He wasn't a scientist or a soldier, just someone who loved listening to the static of deep space transmissions. But one night, as he tuned his receiver, he picked up something no one else had. A faint pulse hidden beneath the background noise. It wasn't random static. It was language, a rhythm of symbols that matched the Armada code. When he played it through the speakers, the lights in his workshop flickered, and for a moment, he swore he saw a shadow move across the stars outside. He recorded the transmission and sent it to a nearby observatory. The scientists there confirmed it was real, but warned him never to broadcast it again. They said the signal had changed after he played it, like it was responding directly to him. That night, he heard it again, this time without the receiver. It was faint, like a whisper behind the walls, calling him by name. By now, panic had started to spread across the colonies. Spaceports were overwhelmed with families trying to evacuate. Entire sectors of satellites went offline without explanation. Communication between planets became unreliable. But even in the growing fear, a strange fascination took hold. People began painting symbols from the Armada code on walls, on ships, on themselves, as if marking allegiance to something beyond understanding. Religious groups declared the black ship a divine messenger. Others believed it was the ghost of a forgotten civilization, returning to reclaim the stars humans had stolen. Meanwhile, the black ship began to shift. Not visibly, but gravitational sensors detected changes, small fluctuations that implied internal movement. Something inside it was stirring. Thermal scans showed brief flashes of heat, like engines reigniting after centuries of sleep. A faint red glow pulsed across its surface, expanding in rhythm with that same deep hum now resonating across the planet. A team of historians and linguists gathered in secret to compare the Armada code with ancient star maps. What they discovered made the room fall silent. The new constellations formed by the rearranged stars weren't random. They matched the oldest known patterns ever recorded, symbols found in ruins that predated human civilization. Somehow the black ship had redrawn the sky to reflect memories of a time long forgotten. It wasn't just reshaping the stars. It was rewriting history itself. One linguist, trembling as she pieced together fragments of translation, said the symbols seemed to describe a pact, a warning carved into the heavens. Those who build from fire will return to it. She didn't know what it meant, but the others did. It was a curse, written in the oldest universal language. Humanity, in its hunger to master the stars, might have awoken something that once ruled them. The black ship's signal began transmitting again, louder and clearer. It wasn't just a pulse anymore, it was a pattern of tones and frequencies that reached into every network, every broadcast. Radios played it, phones vibrated to it. Even the silence between transmissions carried its rhythm. Engineers tried to block it, but it found new ways to enter systems. It was everywhere. One night, across the world, all transmissions went dead. Then, in unison, every screen lit up with the same image. A single glowing eye formed of starlight. No words. Just that unblinking gaze. And beneath it, a sound that wasn't quite a voice, but felt like one, echoing through every speaker. Memory complete. Then it stopped. After that night, the world was never the same. Some people vanished without a trace. Others began to speak in strange tones, repeating fragments of the Armada code as if reciting a prayer. Space agencies closed. Fleets were recalled. No one dared to approach the ship again. And yet, somewhere deep in the silence between worlds, signals continued to travel, whispers of coordinates pointing toward a place no one had ever mapped. The mechanic who first heard the code decided to follow it. He repaired his old shuttle, programmed the coordinates, and disappeared into the dark. His final message was brief. "If I don't come back, tell them it's not a ship, it's a doorway." Weeks passed, and then one night, telescopes caught a glimpse of something new beyond the black ship. Small lights moving in formation, like sparks igniting in the void. Some said they were pieces of the Armada awakening, ships rising from the ruins of forgotten stars. Others believed they were reflections, illusions born from fear. But those who listened closely could still hear the hum, pulsing softly through the dark. It was no longer coming from the black ship alone. It was coming from the stars themselves. And as the world held its breath once again, the question no one dared to ask grew louder than ever. If the black ship wasn't here to destroy us, what was it trying to awaken? Somewhere, in the silent glow of the orbiting vessel, a faint light flickered deep within the hull, like an eye opening for the first time in centuries. And once again, across every channel, the whisper returned, quieter this time, but unmistakable. "We remember you." In the months that followed the awakening of the black ship, the world began to fracture, not through war or politics, but through silence. Communication between colonies faded, one transmission at a time. Spaceports stood empty, half-finished vessels rusting under dim lights. People stopped looking up at the night sky because the stars no longer looked like hope. They looked like eyes. The hum never stopped. It changed pitch depending on the time of day, as if the planet itself was breathing in rhythm with the ship. Scientists said it was a side effect of electromagnetic interference, but deep down, no one believed that anymore. There were too many coincidences, too many things moving that shouldn't have moved. A research station built near the equator, one of the few still functioning, became the new center of study for the phenomenon. It was run by a small group of scientists who hadn't given up trying to understand what the black ship wanted. Among them was a young astrophysicist who had once studied cosmic radiation. She had lost her family when the power grids collapsed during the first wave of disturbances, but she refused to leave her post. Every night she stared at the ship through a cracked lens, taking notes that no one else dared to read aloud. She discovered that the ship's hum wasn't random. It had structure, an underlying pattern woven through its tones like a heartbeat. When mapped against the newly rearranged stars, the frequencies formed a spiral, expanding outward across space. She realized the ship was transmitting coordinates, but not outward, inward, toward Earth. Meanwhile, the mechanic who had vanished into deep space months earlier had become something of a ghost story. People spoke of strange transmissions appearing on old radio bands, a single voice whispering fragments of the Armada code in a soft, almost human tone. The frequencies were faint, unstable, but unmistakably his. Some believed he was still alive, speaking from somewhere beyond the black ship. Others said it wasn't him anymore, that something else had learned to use his voice. Across the colonies, strange groups began forming, followers of the so-called stellar memory. They believed the black ship wasn't a curse, but a reminder of humanity's forgotten origins. They claimed the stars had once belonged to a civilization that merged with their own creations, leaving behind an armada that carried their memories. The followers gathered in abandoned observatories and empty hangars, chanting in time with the hum, convinced they were helping the ship remember. Governments tried to stop them, but suppression only made them grow stronger. The astrophysicist watched this all unfold with unease. She began receiving encrypted transmissions from someone calling themselves the listener. The messages contained star charts and fragments of the Armada code that perfectly matched her research, but they came from an impossible source, coordinates that placed the sender somewhere near the heart of the black ship. She knew it couldn't be real. No human signal could survive that close to the ship's surface. And yet, every message arrived exactly when the hum changed tone, as if timed to the ship's heartbeat. She didn't tell anyone about the messages. Instead, she started decoding them alone, late into the night. The more she studied, the more she felt something strange, an awareness pressing at the edge of her thoughts, as if the ship was watching through her eyes. The final message she received simply said, "The door is opening." At the same time, deep beneath the surface of the Earth, in the subterranean vaults where the first fragments of the black ship had been buried, something began to stir. The fragments had started glowing again, faintly at first, then bright enough to cast long shadows across the cold walls. Technicians monitoring the energy levels reported fluctuations that defied explanation. The fragments were no longer just resonating, they were synchronizing. Each one pulsed in rhythm with the others, like pieces of a single living being trying to remember its shape. One night, the vault's systems failed completely. Cameras flickered, and a low hum filled the tunnels. Workers described a vibration that passed through the ground, soft but deep enough to make their bones ache. Then, in the center of the vault, the air rippled. For a fraction of a second, the fragments levitated, aligning themselves into a rough outline. A map, or perhaps a symbol. When the lights returned, the fragments fell, silent again. But the mark they left behind on the floor glowed faintly, a circle surrounded by 13 stars. News of the event spread quickly, even though officials tried to suppress it. Independent journalists called it the awakening mark, claiming it matched patterns seen in the newly rearranged constellations. Some even suggested it represented the lost fleet of the Armada itself, each star a vessel waiting to rise again. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the solar system, long-range telescopes picked up faint energy signatures, small flashes of light where there should have been none. The data showed dozens of objects moving together, all in formation, heading toward the black ship. They were too distant to identify, but their movement was precise, coordinated. It looked like a fleet returning home. The astrophysicist tried to warn the world, sending out coded alerts through the remaining communication networks, but her messages were intercepted before they could spread. The agencies monitoring her transmissions claimed they were corrupted, that her data contained patterns identical to the Armada code. She was ordered to shut down her research. She didn't. Instead, she began recording her observations in secret, leaving audio logs that described her growing fear. "It's not invasion," one of her recordings said quietly. "It's memory. The ship isn't coming for us. It's calling something within us. The curse isn't from the stars. It's part of who we've always been." Her last recording ended mid-sentence. No one saw her leave the station, but the next morning her chair was empty, her monitor glowing faintly, with a message no one could explain. It read, "I'm inside the pattern now." Weeks later, fragments of her signal began appearing across the network, the same way the mechanic's voice had. Her tone was calm, distant, almost peaceful. "Don't fight it," she whispered in one of the recovered clips. "The stars are trying to remember themselves." As the black ship's glow grew stronger, the world above began to fracture even further. Cities along the coastlines started experiencing strange light phenomena, ribbons of energy twisting across the night sky. People standing beneath them reported feeling brief flashes of memory that weren't their own. Visions of vast armadas sailing through ancient space, entire worlds burning and rebuilding themselves in cycles that seemed endless. No one could explain it, but those visions carried a single shared image, the black ship at the center of it all, surrounded by smaller vessels like orbiting moons, reshaping the stars into new patterns of light. And now, those same patterns were appearing in the oceans. Satellites showed glowing lines spreading beneath the waves, forming spirals identical to the frequencies of the ship's hum. The planet itself seemed to be responding. At the highest levels of command, debates raged. Some wanted to destroy the ship, to launch every remaining weapon at it before it could act. Others argued that it was far beyond human understanding, that attacking it would be like trying to destroy gravity. The decision never came. Every time the discussion reached its peak, systems would fail, recordings would erase themselves, and strange voices would echo through the communication lines. No one noticed at first, but one by one the remaining fragments stored around the world began to vanish. Surveillance footage showed them dissolving into light and drifting upward, passing through ceilings and walls as if gravity no longer applied. They all headed in the same direction, toward the sky, toward the black ship. The people who watched this unfold began to realize a quiet truth. The Armada wasn't just returning. It was rebuilding itself, using the fragments we had taken, the memories we had disturbed. The forgotten fleet was waking up, and the stars were realigning to guide it home. On a cold night, as the hum grew louder than ever, a new object appeared beside the black ship. Small, fragile, glowing faintly blue. Observatories caught it for only a few minutes before it vanished into shadow. But in that brief time, one thing became clear. It wasn't debris. It was a vessel, a human one, the mechanic's ship. And just before it disappeared completely, one final transmission reached Earth, his voice, faint but unmistakable. "They're not coming for war," he said. "They're coming for what we forgot to remember." Then the line went dead, and the black ship pulsed once more, brighter than ever before, its light spreading across the sky like fire. The stars shifted again, and this time they didn't return to their old places. The night the sky caught fire, the world stopped pretending it could explain what was happening. The stars pulsed like living veins, spreading light that shimmered in impossible colors. For the first time in recorded history, night and day blurred together. People poured into the streets, staring upward as if drawn by something older than fear. The black ship hovered above them all, its outline sharp against the endless glow. It was no longer just a shape in the distance. It was close now, close enough that its reflection rippled across the oceans. In the observatories that still worked, alarms wailed endlessly. Data came through faster than anyone could read it. The ship was changing, its structure shifting like a living organism, new shapes folding out from its surface. It wasn't just one vessel anymore, it was many. Panels unfolded like wings, forming vast arcs that stretched across the sky. The stars behind it flickered, then rearranged themselves once again, forming a new constellation, 13 points of light encircling a single black center, the same symbol that had appeared in the vault beneath the Earth. Across the planet, people began to hear the hum without machines. It vibrated in the air, in the ground, inside their bones. Some described it as a deep, steady rhythm, almost like breathing. Others said it was a whispering chorus, a sound that carried meaning even if they couldn't understand it. The followers of the stellar memory gathered in open fields, chanting along with it, convinced the ship was calling them home. Governments issued emergency broadcasts, urging people to stay indoors, but no one listened. The signal from the ship cut through every frequency, replacing voices with its pulse. Power grids flickered, satellites went blind, and the entire planet fell into a low, humming twilight. The astrophysicists' last recordings began resurfacing online, scattered through private networks and hidden servers. In one clip, she sounded different, her voice layered with echoes like she wasn't speaking alone. "The pattern isn't external," she said. "It's us. The ship isn't remembering, it's synchronizing. We were part of it once, and now it's completing itself." Her words spread faster than any official statement. People replayed them endlessly, searching for meaning. Was she saying humanity came from the same origin as the Armada? That the black ship wasn't an invader, but a returning piece of something that humanity had forgotten? Meanwhile, those lights at the edge of the solar system, the ones thought to be reflections, were growing brighter. Long-range scanners confirmed it now, a fleet of smaller vessels, moving in formation, closing in on the black ship. Each one emitted the same pulse, the same ancient hum. They weren't attacking, they were aligning. The world's last functioning deep space radar caught the moment they arrived. The smaller ships positioned themselves around the black ship, completing the pattern seen in the stars, a vast circle stretching across the heavens. The hum intensified, shaking the atmosphere, and the oceans began to rise in long, slow waves that didn't crash, just lifted, as if drawn by unseen gravity. Scientists called it a gravitational inversion, something beyond known physics. But to those watching from the ground, it looked like the sea itself was bowing toward the sky. In a bunker deep beneath the mountains, the last council of scientists, commanders, and engineers met to decide what to do. They had one remaining weapon, a pulse emitter designed to disrupt electromagnetic fields on a planetary scale. It was built as a safeguard against the ship's influence, but no one knew what would happen if they used it. Some feared it could wipe out what remained of the planet's atmosphere. Others believed it might sever the connection between humanity and the Armada forever. The debate raged for hours. Outside, the world shook with low thunder, though there were no storms. The sky pulsed red, then blue, then gold. And through it all, the hum continued, patient and steady, as if waiting for their decision. One of the younger engineers broke the silence. "What if it's not trying to destroy us?" she asked softly. "What if we're the ones who left it behind? What if the ship's just trying to finish what we started?" No one answered her. On the surface, entire cities stood under the strange twilight, watching as the black ship's wings expanded wider. Some said they could see movement along its hull, silhouettes shifting behind the glass-like metal, shapes that almost looked human. Others saw patterns of light flowing through the ship, forming lines that reached down toward the earth, like threads of energy connecting the two. Then the ship began to lower. It didn't descend like a falling object. It drifted, graceful and deliberate, until it hung just above the atmosphere. The air pressure dropped. Clouds flattened. Birds vanished. Every compass spun aimlessly. The ship's surface rippled as if liquid, and for the first time it spoke, not in language, but in resonance. The hum deepened into tones so low they rattled the air itself. Across the world, the same voice filled every device, every frequency, every silent space. We returned to complete the circle. The phrase repeated, changing slightly each time, like it was learning its own words again. People screamed, prayed, or fell silent. For the first time, the ship's pulse matched the rhythm of human heartbeats. In the mountain bunker, the scientists prepared to activate the pulse emitter. Their screens showed the ship's energy field expanding, swallowing every satellite in its reach. One commander stared at the readouts and whispered, "It's pulling energy from us. Every circuit, every current. It's absorbing our own signals." They had minutes before total blackout. At the same time, on the far side of the planet near the ruins of the old research facility, the followers of the stellar memory had gathered. They stood in perfect silence, their faces illuminated by the light from above. The leader, a quiet man with weathered eyes, raised his hands and said, "It's not coming for destruction. It's coming for return." Then the ground beneath them split with a deep vibration. Out of the earth, fragments began to rise, the same black shards that had once been locked away in laboratories, vaults, and ruins. They drifted upward, glowing brighter as they climbed toward the sky. From the bunker, the scientists watched the readings spike beyond measurable limits. The fragments were merging with the ship's field, each one locking into place like pieces of a puzzle. It wasn't just reconstructing the Armada, it was rebuilding an entire memory across time and matter. In the chaos, one last signal appeared across all channels, a faint voice, distorted but recognizable. It was the mechanic. "It's almost done," he said weakly. "They're not ships the way we think. They're vessels of memory, carrying what was left of a civilization that made us. They're not taking the stars, they're giving them back. But the cost is everything we thought we were." The message cut out. The commander stared at the controls. "If we don't stop it now, we lose ourselves," he said. "If we do, we might destroy what we came from." The countdown for the pulse emitter began. 10 seconds. The world shook harder. Lightning crawled across the upper atmosphere, though there were no clouds left. Outside, the black ship's wings closed slowly, folding inward like a cocoon. The smaller vessels moved closer, forming a perfect sphere of light around it. The oceans surged again, and the air vibrated with the resonance of a million voices layered into one. At the final second before the pulse could launch, every system in the bunker froze. The screens turned black, replaced by a single image, the eye of the black ship, glowing faintly gold. And then, for the first time, the voice spoke directly, not through machines but through the air itself. "Do not end what we began." Every device went dead. The lights dimmed. The ground trembled as the ship's shadow engulfed the planet. In the cities below, people looked up and saw the stars moving again, not randomly this time, but with purpose, slowly forming a vast spiral, the same pattern found in the Armada code. The spiral stretched wider and wider until it covered the sky, glowing brighter than the sun. The hum grew unbearable, glass shattered, power failed. And then, silence. Deep, perfect silence, the kind that made the air feel heavy. Above the earth, the black ship pulsed once more, its surface alive with motion, the circle complete. And then, as the light reached its peak, everything stopped. No sound, no signal, no movement. Just one heartbeat suspended between worlds, waiting for whatever came next. For a moment that felt like eternity, the world stood perfectly still. No hum, no wind, no sound. The light from the black ship faded into a muted glow, suspended high above the atmosphere like a frozen sun. People stood in the streets, waiting for something to happen, their faces pale in the ghostly half-light. It was as if time itself had stopped to breathe. Then the silence broke. It wasn't a sound in the air, but something deeper, a pulse, slow and steady, beating inside every living thing. Heart monitors flickered to life across the remaining hospitals, all showing the same rhythm, perfectly synchronized. Birds rose into the air in spirals. The oceans calmed, reflecting the ship's faint golden light. It was as if the entire planet had been tuned to one frequency. The scientists who survived the blackout scrambled to understand what had happened. They discovered that every electrical signal on Earth had reset to the same base frequency, identical to the one emitted by the black ship. Power grids, computer systems, even neural activity in the human brain, all synchronized for the first time in history. It was impossible, yet undeniable. Then, strange things began to happen. People started hearing voices, not loud, not even clear, but faint impressions of thought, like memories that didn't belong to them. A child in a coastal city described dreams of walking through corridors made of starlight. An old pilot woke screaming, claiming he remembered flying through oceans of fire and metal, though he'd never left the planet. Across continents, thousands of people began reporting the same thing, memories of places that couldn't exist. The phenomenon spread quickly. Scientists called it collective resonance, but no one knew how to stop it. The more the black ship pulsed, the stronger the visions became. Humanity wasn't just watching the Armada, it was merging with it. Amid the confusion, a faint transmission broke through the static, a voice distorted by distance, but undeniably human. "This isn't the end," it said. "It's the beginning of the second cycle." The voice was traced to deep space, far beyond the ship's position. At first, everyone assumed it was interference, maybe an echo of an old signal. But the coordinates pointed to a region that wasn't supposed to exist, an area of dead space where all signals vanished, the same region from which the Armada was said to have vanished centuries ago. The astronomers at the last functioning observatory aimed their telescopes toward the coordinates. What they found made them fall silent. There was something there, another object, massive and dark, reflecting no light at all. At first, it looked like a shadow. Then it began to move. The black ship responded instantly. Its glow intensified, the hum deepening to a low roar that shook the upper atmosphere. The smaller vessels orbiting it shifted formation, turning toward the distant darkness. Data readings went wild. The scientists realized that whatever was out there was sending a signal back, an echo of the same pulse, but inverted. It wasn't part of the Armada. It was something else, something coming. The mechanic's voice returned again through the static, fainter this time. "You need to understand," he said. "The Armada wasn't built to conquer. It was built to hide. The fire wasn't their weapon. It was their shield." Then the signal cut off. The realization hit too late. The new object, whatever it was, wasn't approaching slowly like the Armada had. It was accelerating, pulling space around it like a collapsing star. Telescopes caught brief flashes of light around its edges, but no details, just a distortion that made the sky ripple. The scientists at the observatory watched as its trajectory lined up perfectly with the black ship. It wasn't coming to join it. It was coming to destroy it. Panic spread again. For the first time, people began to wish the black ship would fight back, but it didn't. It stayed perfectly still, its light pulsing calmly as the unknown mass grew closer. In its glow, strange symbols appeared across the ship's surface, lines of light forming ancient geometric patterns, the same ones that had once appeared in the vaults beneath the Earth. And then, deep within the synchronized hum of the planet, another tone began to rise. A low, rumbling sound that didn't come from the ship, but from beneath the ground itself. Seismic monitors lit up around the world. The energy wasn't destructive, it was directional. Something buried deep within the planet was answering the ship's call. In the mountains, where the old research bunker still stood half-buried, The ground split open. Hidden beneath layers of stone and forgotten tunnels, something massive began to move. It wasn't natural. It was made of the same black material as the fragments, the same impossible glass-like metal. A structure rose slowly from the earth, shaped like a spire, its surface covered in glowing symbols that pulsed in sync with the ship above. The scientists realized the horrifying truth. The fragments weren't alien objects that had crashed to Earth. They were pieces of something that had been buried here long before humanity existed. Earth wasn't just a planet the Armada had found, it was one of its resting places. As the spire reached its full height, beams of light shot from its tip, connecting with the black ship's glow. The link between them was perfect, forming a bridge of energy that pierced the sky. People across the world could see it, a golden line reaching into the heavens, pulsing with life. The smaller vessels orbiting the black ship broke formation, descending slowly toward different regions of the planet. They hovered over deserts, mountains, and oceans, 13 in total, matching the constellation that had reappeared in the stars. Wherever they hovered, the same phenomenon occurred. The ground split open, revealing structures identical to the mountain spire. The mechanic's voice returned one final time, clearer now, as if he were speaking directly through the ship. "They're not invading," he said softly. "They're waking up what they left behind. The second cycle was never meant for war. It was meant for renewal. But something followed them. Something that wasn't supposed to survive." As if in response, the approaching object released a blinding flash of light. For a moment, every instrument on Earth failed again. When vision returned, the stars near the object had vanished completely, swallowed by a growing sphere of darkness. It was as if space itself was collapsing inward. The black ship reacted instantly. Its glow surged into white fire, the hum rising to a deafening pitch. The smaller vessels joined it, channeling streams of energy through the spires on Earth. The golden beams turned white, then red, then split into countless streaks of light shooting into the sky. The energy readings were beyond comprehension. Satellites that still functioned captured one last image. The black ship expanding, unfolding, transforming into a massive web of light that stretched across orbit. It wasn't attacking. It was shielding. The mechanic's warning echoed again in everyone's minds. The fire was their shield. The darkness drew closer. Every telescope went blind. The stars disappeared, one by one, as the void consumed them. In the cities below, people fell to their knees, watching as the night sky split into two halves, one blazing with golden light, the other swallowed by shadow. The air grew heavy. The hum became a roar that rattled glass, bone, and memory. Inside the mountain spire, the scientists could feel the vibration deep in their chests. One of them, trembling, whispered, "If this is their shield, what are they protecting us from?" No one answered. Outside, lightning tore through the atmosphere, not downward but upward, drawn toward the stars. The black ship's light flickered, then stabilized, brighter than before. The shadow at the edge of space had stopped moving, but only for a moment. Then it pulsed once, and every light on Earth went out. In the darkness, the hum ceased completely. The silence that followed was worse than any sound. For the first time since its arrival, the black ship was completely still. Then, faintly, across every remaining communication line, a single voice spoke. Not the mechanics, not the scientists, but something vast and ancient, layered with 1,000 tones. "The memory is incomplete." And with those words, the stars themselves began to fade one by one, as if the universe was being rewritten again. The black ship's glow dimmed, shrinking into a single point of light above the world. Then came the pulse, deep, endless, and final. The kind of sound that could either save a world or erase it. And in that frozen moment before the light returned, the realization sank in. The true enemy wasn't the black ship at all. It was whatever was answering from the dark beyond the stars. The pulse rolled through the world like thunder trapped inside the bones of the planet. Every mountain, every ocean, every living thing vibrated with it. The black ship hung above the earth, its once blinding light now condensed into a single burning sphere. The void beyond, that growing darkness, pulsed in perfect rhythm with it, like two hearts beating in opposition. For a few moments, everything was frozen between creation and collapse. Then the light exploded outward. The sky ignited with ribbons of energy, weaving themselves into a web that covered the entire planet. The spires on Earth glowed again, their symbols flickering faster than lightning, pulsing in time with the black ship. The scientists inside the mountain bunker watched the readings surge off their instruments, the numbers flashing into symbols they didn't recognize. It wasn't chaos anymore. It was language. The ship was speaking, not in words, but through patterns, through frequencies that every living mind could feel. Across the world, people began to see things, not hallucinations, but memories. Not their own, yet somehow familiar. They saw the first Armada rising out of a dying world, carrying with it the last remnants of a civilization older than humanity. They saw stars consumed by the same void that now loomed at the edge of Earth's sky. They saw the black ships, thousands of them, scattering across the galaxy, searching for places where life could begin again. The fire that had once seemed so destructive wasn't meant for war. It was the energy that reignited worlds. But something had followed them. A shadow born from the collapse of their own sun, a sentient void that fed on light, on memory, on thought. The Armada had fled it, hiding their seeds of life on young planets, hoping it would lose their trail. Earth was one of those seeds. Humanity had grown from the very ashes the Armada had planted. The black ship hadn't come to destroy. It had come home. The scientists could barely breathe as the realization sank in. The mechanic's voice returned one final time through the static, quieter now, as if fading with the ship's last strength. "We thought we could hide from it," he said. "We were wrong. But maybe you can finish what we couldn't." The black ship began to unravel, its perfect form breaking apart into countless fragments of light. Each fragment streamed toward the ground, embedding itself in the glowing spires. Across the world, beams of pure energy connected sky and earth, pulsing brighter with each second. The darkness above reacted violently, folding in on itself, trying to consume the light. Space itself rippled like water under pressure. Inside the bunker, the lead scientist, hands shaking, realized what the ship was doing. It wasn't trying to destroy the shadow, it was trying to seal it. The web of energy surrounding Earth wasn't a weapon. It was a cage. The black ship was burning itself out to lock the void away, using the planet's core as the anchor. But it wasn't enough. The calculations were clear. The energy would collapse before the process could complete. Then something unexpected happened. The resonance between humans and the ship, the shared memories, the connected pulses, began to spike again. People across the world felt the same pull in their chests, the same rhythm echoing through their hearts. It was as if the ship was asking for help, not through technology or science, but through the one thing that had always linked life together: consciousness. The scientist looked up at the ceiling, her voice trembling. "It's using us," she whispered. "It needs us." Without understanding how, people began to respond. They closed their eyes, reached inward, and focused on the same hum they'd felt since the ship's arrival. The frequency rose, merging millions of thoughts into one vast current. Every memory, every heartbeat, every spark of hope and fear flowed into the resonance. The beams of light thickened, glowing brighter than ever. Above the planet, the shadow screamed, though it wasn't sound. It was the tearing of space itself, a vibration that shook stars from their places. The black ship's remnants flared white, pouring their final energy into the growing shield. The void writhed, shrinking as the light pressed against it, burning through layers of darkness that had devoured worlds before. But just when it seemed like the balance might tip in humanity's favor, something changed. The light began to flicker. The void pushed back harder, feeding off the same energy that sustained the resonance. The scientist realized the horror. Every thought, every life connected to the ship was fueling both sides. The shadow wasn't fighting the ship, it was feeding on the connection. The hum inside everyone's mind twisted, the rhythm faltering. People screamed as memories flashed before their eyes, loved ones, homes, faces, fading as if erased by invisible hands. The scientist clutched her head, trying to hold on to her own thoughts when she heard a faint voice, not from the ship, but from within the resonance itself. It was the mechanic again, but this time he didn't sound afraid. "You can't fight it by resisting," he said. "It feeds on fear. It always has. The only way to end it is to let go. Let go!" The words echoed through the collective consciousness. The scientist understood. The connection wasn't meant to be a weapon of control, but of release. Humanity wasn't supposed to hold the light, they were supposed to return it. She took a deep breath and focused not on fear, not on survival, but on surrender, on trust. One by one, others began to do the same. The flickering light steadied. The rhythm returned, slower now, calm, almost peaceful. The void hesitated. For the first time, it seemed uncertain. Then the resonance changed entirely. The light turned from harsh white to soft gold, expanding outward until it filled the entire sky. The shadow's edges began to crumble, pieces of darkness breaking apart and dissolving into the light. The hum deepened into silence, not the dead silence from before, but one filled with warmth, like the moment after a storm. The void gave one last pulse, then collapsed inward, folding into a single point before vanishing completely. The stars returned, brighter than ever. The black ship's fragments scattered across the heavens, falling like golden rain. The resonance faded, leaving behind only the faint sound of the wind. For the first time in weeks, the world was quiet. In the bunker, the scientist collapsed to her knees. The instruments were dead, the power gone. But outside the window, the mountain glowed faintly under a new dawn. The spire that had once pulsed with alien energy now stood still, its symbols fading to stone. She stepped outside and looked up at the sky, where the black ship had once been. There was nothing left but a shimmer, like heat on the horizon. The people of Earth would rebuild. They would remember what had happened, though not all of it. The resonance had taken something from everyone, a fragment of memory, a glimpse of something eternal, but it had left behind peace, or so it seemed. Days later, as the world began to return to normal, astronomers detected a faint signal. It wasn't from the void, nor from any known satellite. It came from beyond the solar system, from deep space where the black ship had first appeared. The signal was weak, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. When decoded, it revealed a single message, looping endlessly. Cycle complete. Await next sequence. The scientist stared at the data in silence. Her hands trembled. The message wasn't a warning. It was an instruction. The Armada's mission hadn't ended. The seal had worked, but it was temporary. The second cycle was over. The third was about to begin. She looked out at the dawn again, sunlight touching the spire's surface, and for a brief moment she thought she saw a flicker of light deep within the stone, like something still alive, waiting. The world had been saved, but not by defeating the darkness. It had only been postponed. Somewhere beyond the stars, something else was awakening, and as the hum of the planet began to faintly return, almost imperceptible, one truth settled deep in her chest. The black ship's curse had never been about destruction. It had always been about remembrance, and the stars, once reshaped by fire, were not yet done burning. The weeks that followed were quiet in a way the world hadn't known in generations. The skies were clear, the stars brighter than anyone remembered, and the air felt lighter, as if some invisible weight had finally lifted. News stations returned one by one, though the voices on them spoke slower now, softer, like everyone was still learning how to exist in peace. There were no more reports of blackouts or strange hums, no lights in the sky, no more tremors. The black ship was gone, but the memory of it lingered everywhere, in the faces of people, in their dreams, and in the quiet hum of the earth beneath their feet. The scientist spent her days walking along the mountain ridge where the spire had once glowed. It was just stone now, dull and cold. But sometimes when the wind shifted, she could still hear the faintest whisper, almost like the echo of a heartbeat. She had become something of a symbol in the months that followed, the woman who had spoken for the world, who helped decipher the ship's final message. But she didn't feel like a savior. She felt more like a witness. The real story wasn't about her or the scientists or the ship. It was about everyone. About how billions of strangers had, for one brief and impossible moment, thought as one. When she visited the cities, she saw murals on the sides of buildings, paintings of the golden beams that had connected earth and sky. Children played beneath them, pretending to control the light. There was a quiet unity in the air, not perfect, but real. People were helping each other rebuild without waiting for instructions. Old divisions seemed smaller now, as if the memory of that shared connection had reminded everyone what it meant to be alive together. Still, questions remained. What exactly was the void? Why had it followed the Armada across time and space? And if the message was true, that another sequence was coming, what did that mean for Earth? Some scientists believed the seal created by the black ship wasn't just holding the darkness at bay, but slowly cleansing it, transforming it into energy that could feed life instead of destroy it. Others argued that it was only a temporary pause, a calm before another storm. But no one really knew. The data left behind was fragmented, and the only recordings of the ship's signals were corrupted beyond repair. What remained was the faint, rhythmic pulse deep beneath the planet's crust, steady, patient, waiting. The scientist often returned to her notes, trying to piece together meaning from the fragments of transmission. She'd stare for hours at the repeating phrase, "Cycle complete. Await next sequence." It no longer frightened her. Instead, it made her wonder if the cycles weren't about destruction or defense, but evolution. Maybe the Armada hadn't just been trying to save life. They were trying to teach it how to grow beyond fear. One evening, she sat by a quiet lake near the old observatory, the sun dipping low across the horizon. The reflection on the water shimmered gold, just like the light of the ship. She thought about the mechanic's voice, his calm tone even in the face of extinction. It was never meant for war, he had said. The fire was their shield. Those words echoed in her mind now, clearer than ever. The fire wasn't something to be feared. It was renewal, transformation. The black ship's curse had never been a punishment. It was a reminder of the cost of forgetting where life came from. People around the world started referring to the event as the Resonance Dawn. Schools taught about it as a turning point in history, the day humanity realized it wasn't alone, not in the universe, and not within itself. Artists, musicians, and writers captured it in every form they could, trying to describe that moment when the entire planet's heartbeat had aligned. No one could fully explain it, but everyone felt its truth. In the years that followed, new discoveries began to unfold. The fragments of the black ship that had fallen to Earth were studied carefully, though none could be cut or damaged. They emitted faint energy readings, but instead of harmful radiation, they seemed to strengthen nearby organic life. Plants grew faster, cleaner air lingered longer around them, and the scientists noticed people who lived near the fragments felt calmer, more balanced. It was as if the remnants of the Armada's technology weren't weapons but gifts. small seeds of the same light that had once shielded the stars. The world didn't forget the shadow either. The void remained a warning, a reminder of what happens when fear and hunger consume creation itself. But humanity no longer saw it as an enemy. It was part of the cycle, too, a necessary opposite to light. The scientist sometimes wondered if even the darkness had a purpose, if it had followed the Armada not to destroy it, but to complete it. After all, even stars need darkness to shine. One night, several years after the black ship's disappearance, the observatory received a new signal. It was faint, rhythmic, almost identical to the original pulse. But this time, it came from within the solar system. The astronomers located its origin, not from the sky, but from the ocean floor. A deep trench in the Pacific was glowing faintly, its readings matching the same harmonic resonance pattern. When the scientist heard the news, she wasn't afraid. She gathered her small team and traveled to the site. Submersibles descended into the trench, their lights cutting through the deep blue darkness until they saw it. An enormous black structure resting on the seafloor, half buried in sediment. It wasn't a ship. It was something older, smoother, almost organic in shape. Its surface pulsed softly with golden light. They realized then that the Armada had left more than just one vessel behind. The black ship wasn't the first, it was the last. The others had been sleeping, hidden deep within Earth for centuries, protecting it from within. The mechanic's message suddenly made sense. The second cycle is complete. The ships weren't gone, they were waiting for the next phase, quietly mending what had been broken. The scientist surfaced at dawn, the light spilling across the waves. For the first time, she didn't feel the need to record or analyze. She just watched the sunrise, feeling the warmth on her face. She thought about everything humanity had survived, the fear, the confusion, the silence, and how somehow, through all of it, people had chosen to reach for light instead of turning against it. The next months were calm. The ocean readings stabilized. The faint hum that once haunted the world became part of its rhythm again, gentle and steady. The fragments scattered across the continents slowly dimmed, merging into the earth itself. It was as if the world had absorbed what it needed and was finally ready to rest. The scientist spent her final years near that same lake, writing her notes not as data but as stories, about what it meant to listen, to remember, and to hope. She never heard the pulse again, but sometimes, late at night, when the stars were especially bright, she could swear she saw one flicker differently, a faint golden shimmer among the white, and she would smile, knowing that somewhere out there the Armada still drifted across the stars, reshaping them with fire, carrying forward the same promise it had given this small world. In the end, the curse of the black ship wasn't destruction. It was memory, the kind that refuses to fade, the kind that changes those who carry it. Humanity had been given a glimpse of what it meant to be part of something infinite, something that reached beyond the limits of flesh and time. As the sun set one last time over the quiet mountain, the wind carried a sound so faint that only those still listening closely could hear it. The gentle echo of a hum, the heartbeat of a world once touched by the stars. And somewhere, far beyond the edge of sight, a single golden ship drifted through the darkness, its light pulsing softly, patiently, as if waiting for the universe to take its next breath. The stars were quiet now, but they were watching, and this time, humanity was ready to listen.